your career and success been a vehicle for promoting the ideas of unity, the oneness of humanity, justice, and the importance of service?
I've been lucky to work on Baha'i projects like the World Congress, like the dedication of the terraces, like lots of conferences where I did music for them over the years. And I've really felt that that was a small contribution, but it was a way of trying to use my profession or whatever success I'd had to be able to actually work on those things and help and be of some service. I think actually the idea of being of service is almost as important as the goals of unity, because if things are done in a spirit of service, it's actually a spiritual act. You know, it's interesting when those things have converged for me, they converged for me with the Project Mona with the children, because we were all affected as a Baha'i community by the persecution of the Baha'i community in Iran and its brutality and its prejudice against the Baha'is and its continued pogroms against them that are continuing to this day, you know, burning villages, Baha'i villages in Iran still, stealing people's businesses, preventing them from getting an education. It's pretty intense and it's pretty scary. But when they murdered 10 women in 1983, in June of 1983, it was the largest mass execution of a group of women in any Middle Eastern country. And the youngest was a 16-year-old girl, turning 17. I think she turned 17 in prison. She stood up to them and stood up to them in the way that she presented her arguments in court. She presented the fact that this was, these ideas were really important about how to have equality of men and women, about how to have the right to freedom of conscience, and the right to practice their religion in their country. And they still executed them, 10 amazing women, from teenagers to grandmothers. So when a bunch of artists came together in Canada, including Seals and Crofts and Dan Seals and Buffy St. Marie and Alex Rocco and Doug Cameron, all these people, you know, gave their time and their soul to really doing amazing amazing thing. Makes me very emotional just to talk about it, because we need that again right now. You know, our community is really suffering in that country, and the only way we can stop their suffering is by putting pressure, especially through bringing this to the attention of our fellow citizens. And so that to me was really an important moment in my life, because I realized we could do something.
Yeah.
We could actually have an impact through the arts and the song, and people could look at the example of this girl, this one girl,
yeah,
and the impact that she has and will continue to have because of her sacrifice and her courage.
yeah. I wanted to mention, especially with the video and the song of Mona with the children, if I have my statistics right from what I've researched, it's an example of also how it brought light to an issue that still a lot of people don't know about.
Yeah.
It's not talked about, but was able to be a song that people still liked and that it was able to make an impact. I think it reached number 14 on the charts. And so it showed how a song with a great message that really served a purpose. And I think that's just a wonderful example. And it's one of the many examples in history of, you know, how that can be done. And as you said, Mr. Lenz, I mean, the topic itself hits really close to home for me.
Sure.
But and on top of that, for youth in general, we want to see the better world. And I think that starts when we all begin learning about everything that's going on in the world. And we start gaining that, getting that knowledge of the fact that our world is interdependent. We are one world. What happens somewhere else still affects us. Also, on a more general note to the question itself, from the work that I've seen, from all your works that I've seen, I mean, the different topics that you're able to cover in your work, from racial injustice to the persecution of Baha'is, to the rights of children and the struggles that children have, which we're going to talk a little bit about in a second. it's just really amazing, and they're all so impactful. I mean, I cry every time I watch Mona with the children.
آره برادر کلک همشونو میکنی یالا آره
یالا زود باش کار داریم میخوایم بریم زود باش بجام تازه اول کاره
آره برادر کلک همشونو میکنی
Oh
you have been particularly involved in advocacy for children's rights and their well-being for children around the world. Would you please elaborate on what inspired you to be involved in trying to combat these issues and how you have used your career and platforms to raise awareness about this particular topic?
Yeah, I think that I was, again, really fortunate. I did this event in 2002 after 9/11. It was supposed to be right after 9/11, but of course that stopped everything. But Nelson Mandela and Graça Machel, his wife, really did inspiring things at the UN. And one of the things they did was they prepared this whole program, and they got 94 million signatures of children all over the world for this program, which was basically to at the second special session for children at the UN in 2002 in May. They were able to present to the leaders of the world, and there were over 800 people attended this meeting. The 10 things that kids need, that they're so simple, as simple as clean water, as simple as shelter, as simple as being safe. And here's an interesting statistic.
Mm-hmm.
Over half of the world's population lives on less than $2 a day. How do you feed your children on $2 a day? How do you make sure they're nourished? How do you make sure they're going to get an education? How do you make sure they're going to have clean water? Basic necessities and education, when that's what you're working with. That's all you've got, So it gives you an understanding of why child labor exists, why child marriages exist, all these things that contribute to symptoms, in a sense, of poverty, and the vast gap or lack of understanding of the vast gap between rich and poor.
Yeah.
We have to build a different type of society that recognizes that philanthropy should be taught from the time you're 2 years old. Then I got a chance to work with this children's theater company in New York that was founded by Mayor Mansouri, and the kids came and participated in this incredible event at the UN, and we had 800 children performing for, over 1,000 children performing for 800 delegates and heads of state and ambassadors. And it really was inspiring because also the group from South America, from Venezuela, the Simon Bolivar Orchestra came and played for everybody. And it was really to celebrate the idea of what we should be doing for children around the world, and what we're not doing and what we need to do. And so that really kind of inspired me to do more. And then I started producing children's television series around 2005. And I produced a number of television series that I thought would help with education and creating knowledge, but doing it through entertainment. And then my own, within our family, because we have a severely disabled daughter, that was the other motivator for me as to what we could do for a very vulnerable population, these kids who just kind of don't get many breaks in life. And oftentimes they have one person, their mom, looking after them, and their lives get pretty circumscribed. And of course, even in Canada and the US, we have these challenges. So imagine what it's like in war-torn countries where the disabled children just don't even have a chance, So, and the disability is much more common than we think. So it's really about trying to create awareness and trying to, again, I wish that there was more time in one life to be able to do something effective and more effective. But I think the struggle continues to do what you can.
my angel, my miracle in this world. And if she flies away, I miss my little girl. How can I live without her love in my world? Father and daughter, through the years, as she comes and goes, through joy and through tears, she will always know he loves us all, he loves us all, he'll never let go. Oh no. Father and daughter, father and daughter, father and daughter, daddy's good. There's no one like her in the whole wide world. When she looks in the mirror, what does she see? It's never as good as daddy sees. And she's my angel, she's daddy's little girl. And she's my angel, my miracle in this world. And if she flies away, I miss my little girl. How can I live without her love in my world? How can I live without her love in my world? Father and daughter,
How touching. In the same spirit of youth and talking about the problems that youth face, I would love to know, what do you think is the role of youth in service in today's society?
Well, I really, I was very lucky to have a wonderful Baha'i teacher in Otto Rogers, and I think I mentioned him from the university. And so I met him when I was a youth, right? And he said a very interesting thing to me, which I realized actually Abdul Baha had said many times, and that was that a life full of service is a life of happiness. And who doesn't want a happy life, right? And so that's one aspect of it. Is it's the basis of human happiness when you forget your own needs and really think about others. And it's why when oftentimes when you ask children what they want to be when they grow up, and you listen to the things they say, it's always about people who serve others: a nurse, a firefighter, a doctor, a veterinarian. It's interesting. And so I think that a lot of our natural kind of social human capacity and latent gifts are often based on the desire to serve others. And so I think the biggest challenges that we have are some of the things that we've talked about are timidity, being too timid, being complacent, not caring enough, and apathy. Just the inability to break out of patterns that the society establishes. I think we're born to serve. I think our happiness rests in service. But the other thing is, you can't stay in your same patterns that a society like ours inculcates, which is really selfishness.
Mhm.
You can't stay in those patterns. You have to break out of those patterns and realize that you have far more to give than you think. Right? And then I think the other aspect of it is, in that process, then you often discover what your best talents are, what your gifts are, and how you should develop them. That's so important, because everybody has different capacities, different talents, but it's often service that draws attention to the things that you really have as your gifts. You know,
Exactly. And it allows us to, I think, get to know ourselves a little bit better as we also get to help others. It's a twofold process. And it's also something that we've mentioned on the show before that really helps us grow ourselves, like you mentioned. So, in terms of service and the idea of helping our world become a better place, what do you think is the role of youth in today's society?
I think the biggest challenge that we face, and especially young people, is to again break out of patterns of disunity. I think the biggest challenge for us as human beings is that we're not united. And you know, one of Mona's dreams is that she wanted the youth to arise together and to be unified, to be you know, really close to one another. But we have so many things that pull us apart because we learn this unfortunate pattern and habit of what I call unnecessary judgment of others. And so the whole kind of thing about bullying, the whole kind of thing of criticism, these things have become of gossip. They've become so ingrained in a society that we don't even know how destructive they are. But if we set our goal on creating unity and what I call fellow feeling,
Yeah.
feeling for others, having empathy, having a concern for others, and really recognizing unity as a strength, how much more you can accomplish with others if you're unified and if you have a unified vision. Like the biggest challenges that we have in the world are disarmament. And you know, Baha'u'llah called for that demilitarization in the 1850s. And it has to become a primary focus for this next generation. We cannot continue. We can't accomplish climate change. We can't accomplish peace. We can't accomplish any kind of this removal of the gap between rich and poor. If artists aren't pointing this out and young people aren't pointing this out, we're missing the boat. This is a huge issue and we have to face it.
I think, like we've been talking about throughout this whole discussion, is the idea that people, especially youth, really need to become unified in order to tackle these very important and very real issues that our world is facing that impact us all. And so, if we aren't able to come together and we aren't able to take a united stance on what is the best for our world, we're not going to be able to achieve it.
Yeah.
So youth really have a powerful position in deciding, I guess, which way the pendulum swings of if we're going to be able to be the generation that makes the world the best place that it can be. With that, what advice do you have for youth who want to pursue a career in music and composition?
It's not an easy career choice. And as you and I have talked about, there's no defined path. Right? It's everybody finding their way. But there's something about that finding their way that actually makes it more interesting, right? Because, for example, if you value the struggle and you know that that struggle is going to give you other strengths and unleash other capacities within yourself, then you won't back away from that struggle. You'll have the courage, you'll have the fortitude, you'll have the patience, you'll have the perseverance. You'll have those things if you value that struggle.
Yeah.
And recognize that you know, that's part of developing. I always used to say that, you know, this career choice is difficult because nobody writes you a check every week.
Yeah.
Or every 2 weeks, whatever the pay period is. You have to try to figure out how it is that you can sustain a life, how you can sustain a family, how you can you know, make a living. And so you have to be inventive. You have to be imaginative. You have to use all those capacities that you've got in terms of creative expression. You also have to use those for opportunity. But I also think that you have to study greatness. You have to determine what greatness what you understand greatness to be, and then you have to study it. You have to study what makes a great song. You have to study what makes an inspirational lyric. You have to develop your technique, and as you develop your technique, it has to become second nature, so that whatever is in your heart, whatever you want to express, it's also in your hands. It's in your voice. You've developed a technique to be able to express things in as close to perfection as you can get, because that also helps you create something that then has value to others. It's a very complex question, because that whole idea of, how do I make something that's pleasing enough to others, or magnetic enough, or interesting enough to want them to purchase it. It's very, there's a plethora, there's a huge amount of music out there right now.
Yeah.
And what is it that will distinguish you as an artist? What is it that you hopefully can develop that makes that interesting to others? Or I've often heard producers and people say, we're looking for ear candy, and I always used to think, oh my God, it's really come to that. It's like, or eye candy if they're talking about a visual expression.
Yeah.
I've never been interested in candy. What I think the human heart longs for is inspiration.
Yeah.
It longs for something that is enduring, and the greatest music in the world endures. That challenge of being able to develop music or art that actually endures with people and stays with people should be something that is a basis of study.
Wonderful advice, and I think it's advice that is applicable beyond just music and composition, but really the arts as a whole. And
Yes.
one thing that you mentioned, the idea of this path being undefined and being unique for everybody, I think that is also a chance wherein, as you're developing your path to success, or your path to making this a career that is, I guess, viable, you are also in the process then uncovering your capacities or enhancing your capacities, because you're finding what works for you, what doesn't work for you,
Right.
what draws you, what doesn't draw you. And so all of that is also, I think, an opportunity and an important part of the process of what makes you become a musician, a composer, an artist, whatever in the arts field, and that is able to deliver a message that's impactful and inspiring to others, because you're developing that within yourself. Would you agree?
Yes, very much so.
Throughout our whole conversation, I have thoroughly enjoyed it. We've been through a lot of emotions, but I hope that you all listening have taken away, something that is inspiring to you and that makes you think about the impact of music really when you walk away from this episode. But before our episode ends, do you have any additional words of encouragement or advice that you would like to share with our audience?
The best advice that a person can give is one that doesn't create a burden for the person receiving it. So that's why I think messengers of God come, like Jesus, like Muhammad, like Buddha, like Moses, like Zoroaster, like the Bab and Baha'u'llah. They come because they're certainly in a position to give advice, as they are, in a sense, the spiritual suns. As there's a sun in the physical world which illumines everything, so there is in the world of the intellect and the heart and the mind, right? And the spirit. And that's why these beings are so important. And one of the pieces of advice that I always feel we need to connect with is we should actually try to connect with the souls in the next world, however that happens. And maybe it's through meditation, maybe it's through prayer, maybe it's just through being open to it. I think one of the videos that you're going to play is called "Here Comes Love." And one of the things that's interesting about that was when I thought about how it is that we could connect with the really spiritual and moral issues around racism. The things that we need to solve something like that. It really becomes a moral and spiritual issue of how we see creation, of how we see that God has created everything with beauty. How God does not distinguish between colors of people, that he's interested in the human heart. Right? So I wrote this simple little chorus that says, "Here comes love from the world above." And what does that mean? Well, it means that, it's said so much more eloquently in the Baha'i writings. Those souls that have left this world in a very pure and detached condition are given a power to inspire all the arts and scientific discoveries in the arts and sciences in the world, that these pure souls are the motive cause for the discovery of these great things, whether it's music or science or anything that's part of human invention. It's just a great resource.
Well, what lovely advice. And with that, Here Comes Love.
Here comes love from the world above. 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 I tell you this, my friend, these days bitter as venom shall pass away, my friend. Days bitter as venom, and once again, my friend, days sweeter than sugar shall come away, my friend. Days sweeter than sugar. Oh, days sweeter than sugar. Oh, days sweeter than sugar. Here comes love. Here comes love from the world above. Oh, yeah. From the world above. Miss Rosa Parks, Jimmy Lee Jackson, James Chaney, from the world above. Yeah. And to believe again, dreams have a meaning. Let freedom ring, my friend. Dreams have a meaning. To free a captive soul, this more precious than silver shall come to pass. I know this more precious than silver. Oh, this more precious than silver. Oh, this more precious than silver. Oh, here comes love from the world above. Oh, here comes Andrew Goodman from the world above. Michael Swain. the world above. Here comes love. And the Reverend James reads. Here comes love. Here comes love. Here comes love from the world above. Here comes love. Here comes love.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Lenz, for your insight and advice today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, as I said before. To learn more about Mr. Lenz and to check out his works, visit his Facebook at jack.lenz.391 and his websites at http://www.lenzent.com and jacklenzmusic.com. Mr. Lenz has been working on a number of exciting new and upcoming projects, including a Baha'i Feasts and Holy Days songbook. Would you like to share more about these projects with us?
It took me 3 years. I wrote 36 songs. I know there are only 11 holy days and 19 feasts, and then there's so that's 30, and then there's the Ayami Ha, which makes it 31. But I wanted to have a new version of the Song of the Months that I'd written back in '82 for as a children's album. I wanted to do a chant version of the months in both English and Arabic, and then I also wanted to do an up-tempo closing sort of the album with an up-tempo kind of really celebrational version of Song of the Months with different time signatures and experimenting with different ideas. And then lastly, I decided, I really would love to have some pieces in between some of those pieces that really would have special meaning. So there's one on kindliness, which is before the month of speech. And there's one called He Will Dwell With Them, which is about God dwelling with humanity in this evolution towards our fulfillment, which comes after the Day of the Covenant song. And then just one more, which was a prelude to the Martyrdom of the Bab. And the prelude was something that he said when he was on pilgrimage in Iraq about what was going to happen to him. He sort of predicted his own martyrdom. And so I wanted to do a piece for that. So all those holy days, all those feasts, it's about 36 songs, which is, I think, a good number. And it's also a way of trying to maybe have the Baha'i community have more music at its events and meetings. But it's also something because the singers that sang on it is a group in Toronto called Countermeasure, are one of the best a cappella groups in the world. And the vocal renditions are really so well done by this wonderful group. And so it was very different for me to work with a different type of approach where maybe the songs, again, could be inspiring to people. So that was the idea. And also where there was a quality throughout the album of the exploration of how to set Baha'i writings to music, or maybe how not to set them to music, because it's really hard to do, as you know. And so, that's a continual sort of experimentation that I'm interested in. And so it's available on jacklenzmusic.com, which is a new site that I've done, which is a retrospective site of all my music over 50 years. Seems like 50 years is long enough. But I really feel like this is going to travel far beyond the Baha'i community. I just finished a new soundtrack for Sony on a film called Shelter for Sony Classics. And so I'm in discussions with Sony about releasing this through Sony Classics, because it's a really, it's a unique idea. And I think it could have a lot of meaning to people well beyond our community. And that's what I try to do with my work, is not just do it for the Baha'is, but do it for the world.
What a lovely message. And I'm super excited for the book. The more music, the better, as always. And it sounds like there are a few more exciting projects in there that you mentioned that we can stay tuned to hear about. So be sure to stay tuned for its release, and we will be sharing it when it's released over here on the Spirit of Success's socials. Well, thank you again for your time today, Mr. Lenz. And as always, thank you all for listening. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and like the podcast on its various platforms, including YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts to be notified each time a new episode is posted. If you want to get the latest updates about the show, announcements, submit questions that you would like me to consider to talk about on the show, or join discussions related to the topics we discuss on the show, follow us on Instagram at spiritofsuccess, Facebook at spiritofsuccess9, and our new Facebook group under the Spirit of Success. Until next time, I'm your host, Yara, and don't forget to continue challenging yourself and working to make your spirit soar to new heights. Bye!